usual opening recitation in English, done in a chanting style. Then also a reminder to everyone that if possible, turn on your video to see and to be seen, because this is really like, we are in the same temple space. There isn't a space in the temple where you hide in a closet to participate. Although maybe there are some people in the closet in the temple, I don't know. But also I do understand, so don't worry about it, if there's chaos going on in the back, or you're not feeling well but you want to participate and you're lying down in your bed. I mean, we all have good reasons why the video is not on, but I want to encourage you to really think of it as, it's like we're all in the temple, in the same space. And so that kind of brings some level of like accountability. I know that, when I turn my video off, I could, kind of be distracted and do this and do that, and if no one sees me, then nobody knows, right? So it's good to have some kind of accountability, and it's good to be seen, for us to see and to be seen. Anyway, just a gentle reminder that it is good. And then, of course, we have more than one screen. So for those of you, you should remember from time to time you can click, to get a different view of who else we're able to see, and not just be limited to the number that turns up on your screen at one look. Yeah, so you can move that around as well. And then one of the strengths of Skype, of Zoom, is it allows you to have a gallery view or the view of the speaker. Those are two possibilities, gallery view. And so we will start with the opening recitation on page 1. So before we start the recitation, take a few moments to just let body and mind settle. Mentally to make that kind of resolve, to say, okay, mind, mind and all your distractions. Now for the next 2 hours, whatever things you want me to attend to, we'll just have to wait. And so we have to, kind of say to our mind, say to ourselves, yes, there are lots of things that are worthy and necessary for my attention, but you know what? In these next 2 hours, you all have to just wait. And so it's good to be able to say to all the other concerns and all the other competing needs and situations that want your attention, to be able to say to them in a firm, but don't have to be nasty about it, but in a firm way, say, yes, you'll get your attention, 2 hours later. Right now, you just have to wait. Yeah, you just have to wait. So making that, making that kind of like, you just have to wait, Yes, you're important, yes, but you just have to wait, right? So we say that. Then let your body settle and be comfortable, and let your mind settle. Letting body settle means, like we stop fidgeting. We pay attention to how body is present or not present. We pay attention to subtle bodily sensations. See, if you continue to fidget, it's hard for you to really generate any kind of sensitivity or awareness to the different sensations that are arising with regards to body. And especially, I think, in the West, people live in a way that is very cut off from bodies. Very cut off from bodies. And as a result of that, the body becomes exaggerated as an object of obsession. Either liking or disliking in very strong ways, because we're so out of touch with the experience of having a body, of being an embodied being. So much so that there are spiritual traditions that seem to suggest that to go beyond the body or to ignore the body is a good thing to do. It is good not to be tethered to the body, but that is very different from having this disconnect and losing awareness of having body. So the Buddha taught mindfulness of body. That means being aware and alert to having a body and the sensations that arise. It's when we begin to pay attention to the subtle sensations that arise with body that our mind becomes more subtle. That our mind becomes less tempted to go look for something else to pay attention to. Something else out there more exciting. So to develop awareness of this body, of the sensations of the body, and then to pay attention to how your mind, your attitude, your emotions react, the reactivity that arises when physical sensation arises. And so to be able to see on that subtle level, seeing, not judging, to see and to know what is going on. Without analysis, it's not analyzing, it's not judging, it's not trying to figure anything out, but it's simply to know the body and to know the mind. Know and recognize all the gross and subtle physical processes going on. Know and recognize all the mental, emotional processes that are going on. All other sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish that state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in a state of the most then precious Bodhi. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. Experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. Thus, until I achieve Buddha, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. All sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious kind root Guru, the embodiment of the exalted body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of the Tathagatas of the 10 directions and the 3-time source of the 84,000 heaps of Dharma and lore. The noble Sanghas, we take refuge in the kind root and lineage Gurus. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge in the perfect Dharmas. We take refuge Sanghas. We take refuge in the assemblies of Viras, Dharkinis, and Dharmapalas, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage Gurus. Refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the idams. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge in the perfect Dharmas. We take refuge in the noble Sanghas. We take refuge in the assemblies of Viras, Dharkinis, and Dharmapalas, so the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage Gurus. Refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the idams. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge perfect Dharmas. We take refuge in the noble Sanghas. We take refuge in the assemblies of Dharkinis and Dharmapalas, possessors of the eye of wisdom, until I attain the heart of Bodhi. Refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas develop mind and progress on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all wandering beings, give rise to bodhicitta, apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of Bodhi, I take refuge the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas develop mind and progress on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of wandering beings, give rise to bodhicitta, and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent. I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. Be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. Be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. Bhadra Samaja, Bhadra Samaja, Bhadra Samaja, protectors of all sentient beings without exception, deities who vanquish the ruthless hordes of Maras, knowers of everything as it is, Bhagavans and your retinues, please come here. Argyam Padyam Pushpe Dhupe Aloke Kende Nivede Shabda Pratija Som. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, four continents, sun and moon, I hold in mind as the Buddha land and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure realm. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. Namo to the Guru, the complete purity of phenomenal existence. I make offerings to you who manifest in the ground of phenomenal existence and supplicate you for the total liberation of the three realms. Grant your blessings of dredging samsara from its very depths. Lord, wish fulfilling gem, ornament of my crown, beyond word and expression is your victorious mind, endowed with the five superior primordial wisdoms, epitome of love, the one with kindness. Precious protector of wandering beings, I supplicate you in the inner state of my mind, bless me. State of suchness, grant your blessings for realizing this primordially birthless and completely pristine mind as the Dharmakaya beyond thoughts. To the Bhagavan, the Tathagata, the full destroyer, the completely perfect, fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, gone to bliss, knower of the worlds, tamer of beings, charioteer and unsurpassable one, teacher of gods and humans, the supreme and incomparable king of the Shakyas, who is free from the minutest stains, placing my head at your feet, I pay homage with devotion. When you were born supreme among humans, you paced out 7 steps on this great earth and declared, I am supreme in this world. Homage to you who was wise even then, possessing a pure body, an excellent supreme form, an ocean of wisdom, a mountain of gold, fame throughout worlds. Homage to you, supreme protector, with the supreme marks and a face like the stainless moon. Homage to you, golden colored one, free from stains, there is none in the 3 worlds. Homage to you, incomparably wise one. Among humans, charioteer and tamer of beings, the Tathagata, who severs the all-enmeshing fetters, who with senses pacified and utterly pacified is skillful. Homage to you who dwell at Shravasti, you protector, who possesses great kindness, all-knowing teacher, perfect one, basis of oceans of merit and qualities. Homage to you, the Tathagata, purity, the cause of freedom from attachments, virtue that liberates from the lower realms. This alone is the sublime ultimate reality. Homage to the Dharma that pacifies, having been liberated. You show the path to liberation, devoted to the moral precepts. You are a field of perfect qualities. Homage to you, the sublime Sangha. Again, just let body and mind be natural. Let them settle evenly. Even and spacious. And in this way, hold that presence, hold that awareness, hold that presence of mind. Maintain that. After some experience of maintaining, you can even get a sense of resting in it. Resting with confidence. Resting doesn't mean lacking knowing, lacking awareness. Resting in the sense of trusting that this is naturally the way things are, and therefore accepting of the way things are, and not feel like there's a need to fight with anything. At least right now, right where we are, we should understand that these are instructions for how to settle the mind. There's no need to think beyond this and think about, should we fight? Should we argue in the workplace, in other contexts? Leave that all alone. Just limit it right now. At least at this point, just limit it to that right now for the task at hand. For the task at hand here, right now, then there is no need to fight. There's no need to engage in pushing and pulling, but simply abide. Abide in this state where body and mind have settled evenly and spacious. See if you can feel or experience or recognize a quiet joy, a quiet sense of wellness pervading both body and mind. If your awareness, if your mind, if your power to know actually becomes quiet, then it can feel, it can directly experience this sense of well-being that arises when body and mind are settled into their own places. Now please turn to the Tara text, page 1 of that text.
Jason Pama Drama Dan Chun Du Sun Shu Ba Yi Gyawa Se Che Tam Che La Kun Ne Dang We Cha Se Lo Me Tu Du Ba Ma Me Dri Sha She Ro Mo La So Ba Ngo Jo Yi Ki Tru Ne Bu Pa Men So Nam She Su So To Ma Me Ne Da De Bar Mi Ge Chu Dan Tsam Me Nga Sem Ni Nyom Mo Wang Gyur Be De Ba Tam Je Sha Bar Ji Nien To Rang Gyao Chan Chu Sem So Se Ge O La So Be Du Sun Ge Wa Chi Sa Be So Nam La Ni Da Yi Ra Sem Je Nam Gi Sam Pa Dan Lo Yi Ji Dar Ji Tar Wa Chi Chun Tu Mon Te Pa Yi Jur Gi Kor Lo Kor Du So Kor Wa Ji Se Ma Dong Bar Nyang E Mi Da Tu Je Yi Dung Ya Gya Su Jin Wa Yi Sem Je Nam La Shik Su So Da Gi So Nam Chi Sak Pa Tam Je Chan Ju Gyu Gyu Ne Ring Po Mi To Do Wa Yi Dren Pe Pe Du Da Gyu Chu Om Jesu Ma Pa Ma Do Ma La Cha Se Lo Cha Se Ta Re Nir Ma Pa Mo Tu Da Re Yi Ji Pa Se Ma Du Re Dong Gun Jin Pe Dro Ma So Ha Yi Ge Kyo La Du Do Cha Se Dro Ma Nir Ma Pa Mo Jin Ni Ge Ji Lo Dang Tra Ma Jitten Sum Gun Chu Ge Sheng Gi Ge Sar Je Wa Le Ni Chung Ma Cha Se Tong Ke Da Wa Kun Tu Gang Wa Kya Ni Sek Be Sha Ma Ma Tong Tra So Pa Nam Ki Ram Tu Je Be O Ra Bar Ma Cha Se Seng O Chu Ne Ki Ki Pe Me Cha Ni Nam Par Ge Ma Jin Pa Zon Ju Ka Tu Shi Wa Zo Pa Sam De Chu Yu Ni Ma Cha Se De Shin She Pe Su Tu Ta Ye Nam Par Kya Wa Cho Ma Ma Lu Pa Ro Jin Pa To Pe Kya We Se Ki Shin Tu Den Ma Cha Se Tu Ta Ra Hong Yi Ge Don Dang Cho Dan Nam Ka Gang Ma Jitten Dum Po Shak Gi Nen Te Lu Ba Me Par Gyu Par Nyu Ma Cha Se Kya Ji Me La Tsang Pa Lung La Na So Wang Chun Cho Ma Chung Po Ro Lang Tri Sa Nam Da Nun Jin Su Gi Du Ne To Ma Cha Se Tra Je Ja Dan Pe Ki Pa Ro Tung Ko Ra Du Jo Ma Ye Kum Yang Kyang Shak Gi Nen Te Me Ba Tu Pa Shin Tu Bar Ma Cha Se Tu Re Je Pa Chen Moi Tu Gi Pa Wo Nam Par Jum ma chu ge she ni tro ni den ze rao tam je ma lu so ma cha se kun chu sum son cha ge sol mo tu ka nam par ge ma lu chu ge ko lo gen pe rang ge u ge so nam chu ma cha se rab tu ga wa ji be u gen u ge chen wa pe ma she pa rab she tu ta ra yi du dan ji den wang du ze ma cha sa sa shi kyung we cho na tham che gun par nu ma ni ma cho ne yo wa yi ge hong gi pong pa tham che nam par ro ma cha sa da we dum bu ge gen pa tham che shin tu bar ma re we cho na o ba me le ta par shin tu o ra ze ma cha se kya pe ta me ta bar we treng we o na ne ma ye kyam yong kun ne kor ga da ye pong ni nam par jom ma cha sa shing o la cha gi tu gi nun jing sang gi dong ma chu ne jin ze yi ge hong gi ren pa dum po nam ni gen ma cha se de ma ge ma shi ma nyang en de shi chu yu ni ma swaha om dang yang da den de dik pa chen poi chom pa ni ma cha se kun ne ko ra ga we tra yi lu ni nam par gen ma yi ge chi we nya ni ko pe rik pa hong le do ma ni ma cha se tu re shan ni da pe hong ge nam pe sa bon ni ma re ra men da ra dang bing je jik den sun nam yo wa ni ma cha se la yi tso yi nam pe ri dak tak chen cha na nam ma tha ra ni jo pe ki yi ge dung nam ma lu pa ni se ma cha se la yi tso nam gyao po la dang mi am chi yi ten ma kun ne go cha ga we zi ki tso dang mi lam ngen pa se ma cha se ni ma da wa ge pe che ni po la o ra se ma ha ra ni jo tu ta ra yi shin tu da po rim ne se ma cha se de ni sun nam ko pe shi we tu dang yang da den ma don dang ro lang nu jin cho na chom pa tu re ram chu ni ma ca we nga ki to pa di da cha se wa ni shu ca chi.
Next page, page 17. For this particular supplication, we are just going to read in English because this is still new, I think, to some of you. In the mother, the birthless Dharmadhatu, dwells noble goddess Mother Tara, bestowing happiness on all sentient beings. Pray protect me from all dangers. Not realizing ourselves as Dharmakaya, the mind is instead overpowered by kleshas. And so, Mother, sentient beings wander in samsara. Mother Goddess, pray protect us. When Dharma hasn't been born in the heart, we only follow after conventional words and are misled by base philosophical views. Mother, perfect Goddess, pray protect us. It is difficult to realize one's mind. Having seen it, we have not familiarized it, but instead are engrossed in vile deeds. Mother, Goddess of recollection, pray protect us. Mind is naturally existing non-dual wisdom, but due to the habitual propensity of dualistic fixation, beings are bound no matter what they do. Goddess of non-dual exalted mind, pray protect us. Although some say they abide in perfect reality, they do not know the interdependence of cause and effect and are confused about the reality of knowable things. Mother, all-knowing Goddess, pray protect us. The characteristic of space is freedom from constructs, and everything is no different from that. Even so, for disciples who are ordinary persons, Mother, perfect Buddha, pray protect us. In the notes at the end of this supplication, it says, Kyopa Jitten Sunggen was residing at Echung Cave when he beheld a vision of 7 Dharas. On that occasion, he composed these 7 verses of supplication to Dhara for protection, which contain manifold and great blessings. Yeah, so Echung is this cave where Kyopa Jitten Sunggen spent a total of 7 years in retreat, but broken up into 2 parts. In between, I think first maybe 3 years and then 4 years, or 4 years and 3 years. Then in between, maybe about a year, he was traveling. He broke his retreat, so to say, because I think if I remember correctly, he had like questions that he needed to ask, and this is already after the passing of his teacher, his main teacher, Pamodrupa. So after the passing of his teacher Pamodrupa, he would consult Pamodrupa's more senior disciples. Within Pamodrupa's community, he was fairly junior in terms of the amount of time that he spent with Pamodrupa. So he came towards the end of Pamodrupa's life, but he very clearly rose up within that community. This was quite a feat because at that time, Pamodrupa is said to have 500 disciples that were masters in their own right. So they were called like these masters with parasols. That means, like, you know, they have an umbrella, a parasol above their heads. That means they themselves were masters with followers. This was quite common. This pattern, it's like Buddha Shakyamuni also. Among Buddha Shakyamuni's like chief disciples, they were masters in their own right, and they have their kind of retinue, their monks that are training with them. So Pamodrupa similarly had 500, it is said, of these disciples. And they were all monks. So when Jitten Sunggen came to train with Pamodrupa, he wasn't a monk. He was a lay person still. And apparently, Pamodrupa kept urging him and say, you should really take your monk's vows. But it is said that he was too proud to do that. It's very clear from Jitten Sunggen's biography that he later talked about this. He admitted, without hiding the fact that he said that one of his main kind of like problems is pride. He was very proud of his own abilities. So it said that when he went to Pamodrupa's place and settled there, before that he had heard, how great this place was and how disciplined all the monks are. Then when he got there, at least according to his standards, they didn't really like live up to this standard of being very good monks and everything. So pride developed in him. So in part, when he refused to become a monk, it's sort of like to protest against supposedly. So he was very judgmental of like Pamodrupa's senior disciples. He was like, if that's a good monk, like I don't even need to be a monk. I'm better than that. So he had that attitude. But it said that he then also very quickly learned, that this was an impediment to his actual transformation, his development. So one time he harbored some very harsh kind of like opinions of some of Pamodrupa's disciples. I think they were fighting or something that caused him to, basically judge them harshly in his mind. But when he realized that that was going on, it is said that he went to each of them and apologized to them and gave them whatever he had as offerings. But of course, these other senior disciples didn't even know, because Kyopa Jitten Sunggen was hiding it. So they didn't even know that he thought of them in that way. But of course, he himself, he knew. So anyway, Echong is where. So this particular prayer was, I think, in the first 3 years. There is another prayer that he composed, and this time to Avalokiteshvara. And it is said that he composed that in his second period of being in Echong. And at that point, he contracted leprosy. I think between the first and the second, during the break when he went out, he contracted leprosy. And back in those days, to contract leprosy was something that was very kind of like shameful. It was something that people looked down on. To many people, it was a sign of like you being unclean, so to say. And unclean, not just in the clinical sense of unclean. Unclean is associated with like karmically, ethically unclean. So it is said that he tried to hide the fact that he contracted leprosy, because and that was when he was really humbled. Because pride, as he said, as he freely admitted later, pride was one of his most damaging qualities. Contracting leprosy really humbled him. He was so embarrassed by it, and he tried to hide it. But that kind of created a fruitful crisis, because then he took a good look at his own state of mind when he became humbled by contracting leprosy. And then at one point it said that both the pain and the disease of leprosy and his own sense of shame and guilt brought him to the verge of death. And then at the verge of death, when he felt so bad for himself, and he was so wrapped up in self-pity, it suddenly hit him like, if it was so miserable for him, how much more and how much more terrible it must be for all the beings that exist. And it said that in that moment, he completely, from self-cherishing, genuinely it was cherishing others. And that is said to be the final kind of straw that broke his self-grasping and tremendous, like, great compassion. And then at that point, it said that he tried to do prostration to this 11-headed Avalokiteshvara statue that Pamodrupa gave him. So he had with him in his retreat. So then in this moment of like complete giving up of self-cherishing, and his mind was completely focused on other, right? And he thought, okay, this is it, I'm going to die. And he tried to get up. He said, before I die, I should at least make a prostration to the Lord of Compassion, to Avalokiteshvara. And as he did that, he fell. He was so weak, he couldn't do the prostration. He fell flat on the floor. And then, according to his telling of what happened then, in that moment, he felt that this leprosy like slid away from his body. Because it was believed, in Tibetan medicine that leprosy is caused by nagas. So he physically felt like these nagas slid away from his body and disappeared. And in that moment, it said that he finally broke through to enlightenment. So, yeah, Leonard's son is probably trying to grab the phone or something. So of these two, the seven Tara prayer, supplication, and song is very well known, at least among contemporary Drigung people. Yeah. But the Avalokiteshvara prayer is barely known. But recently we got that translated. So I will format that into the form of prayer like this, with the Tibetan and the phonetics and the translation, and then I'll share with you guys. And it's a very nice prayer as well, where he talked about where it's divided into the outer Avalokiteshvara. So in that sense, it's Avalokiteshvara, the deity. Then the inner Avalokiteshvara, which is yourself visualizing, practicing, and habituating yourself as Avalokiteshvara. And then secret Avalokiteshvara, which is like the natural state of the mind. And so it's a praise to the outer, inner, and secret Avalokiteshvara. And then the exalted body, speech, and mind of Avalokiteshvara. So that's a very nice prayer. Anyway, an update about the translation project, translating the teachings of Jitten Sunggen. Right now we have 51 or 52 texts translated, and they are still being edited in various kind of stages of editing. It slowed down a little bit recently in terms of the translators have slowed down a little bit. But we have experienced this before, a slowing down. But hopefully it will not slow down to stand still, that they will be reinvigorated to continue and to translate more. And when we have this volume, it will be a very significant, I think, contribution to more people having access to the teachings of Jitten Sunggen. Khenchen Rinpoche continues to lament the fact of how he says majority of Drigong people don't read these teachings. In part because they are a little bit difficult. They're a little bit difficult to read. And there's no tradition of like reading them. The irony, because it's so profound, quote unquote, it's so sacred. So they sit on the shrine, you know. And then the idea of like, you know, if my little feeble mind tried to read something so profound, and if I don't understand it, and then I have doubts towards it, then I might create negative karma. This kind of thinking is very strong. Not just in this context, in many contexts, you know, oh, you know, if I do this wrong, this dharma, you know, it will be very negative. And I think this is completely misunderstanding, you know, what it means when even if you encounter something that says, you know, you have to do this carefully, you have to do this with the right state of mind, yeah? Otherwise, you know, negative things might happen. I think this is not to be taken literally. This is not so much about saying, you know, procedural wise, right, you run into problems, you'll be punished for it. This is really talking about the motivational level. Yeah, that our motivational level should not be perverted by the 8 worldly concerns. That is what we need to be more careful about. Yeah. Otherwise, don't worry about, you know, oh, I did not pronounce it right. Maybe I'll go to hell for it. Oh, I did not ring the bell right. Maybe I'll go to hell for it. Oh, you know, I put the picture, you know, on the wrong side of the shrine. Oh, maybe I'll go to hell for it. You know, like, don't worry about those things, you know. I mean, when you have the occasion to learn, yeah, there is a particular form, there is a particular tradition. Yes, we don't put this image on this side, we put it on this side. Yeah, you know, there's all those things to learn. And I'm happy to teach the things about that I know, you know. But our attitude towards those things is that they are skillful conventions that for the sake of simplicity, for the sake of uniformity, for the sake of, you know, when a group of people are gathered together, we do the practice as one body, you know, as Christians will say, right? With Christ as the head, you know, with Gampopa Jitten Sunggen as the head, the rest of us are the body, right? So you want the body to kind of work together. Yeah, so yes, there are these conventions or forms of when we do this, when we do this, when we do this. Yes. But these are not the things that will lead you to the hell realms if you do it wrongly. What leads to the hell realms, quote unquote, whatever you think of the hell realms are, is letting the 8 worldly concerns pervert our Dharma practice. Yeah. So even that, taking the language of hell realms out of the picture, because, you know, religious people sometimes, you know, spend too much time talking about the hell realms. Take the hell realms out of the equation. What it is saying is like, if the Dharma is perverted by 8 worldly concerns, then what are we going to use, right, to rescue us from suffering? In other words, if the medicine that the doctor prescribed for us to get well, we abuse that medicine, then we have lost all hope. And that's pretty hellish. Hell realm in that sense, then it's pretty hellish. Likewise, all that talk about samaya this, samaya that, samaya this, samaya that, and hell realms, it's because samaya is about, right? As I mentioned before, Gachen Rinpoche likes to say samaya is about love. So love is that bond, is that glue that glues us all together. And so love is based on trust, on trusting. And if that trust is broken, yeah, of course it is hellish. Yeah, hell realm in that sense, of course it is hellish. Because it means so much, right? And so when it is betrayed, when it is broken, everybody suffers. In that sense, it's not like there's a Buddhist court that will sentence you to the hells. So same, here. Know what to worry about and what not to worry about. Don't misplace your worry, in terms of practicing Dharma. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Yeah. More important, usually, than all the technical details of right and wrong, is the 8 worldly concerns. And that takes us to Gampopa's 4 Dharmas. Yeah. The very first Dharma. May the Dharma go towards the Dharma. Meaning, may your practice, actually go in the direction of why Buddha gave those practices. May our Dharma go towards the Dharma. And then Gampopa's commentary says, that means, may the Dharma not be perverted by the 8 worldly Dharmas. Those are also called Dharmas, because Dharma simply means phenomena. Yeah. So may the Dharma, may the Buddha Dharma not be perverted by the 8 worldly Dharmas. The 8 worldly Dharmas is what we translate as the 8 worldly concerns, right, into the 2 columns. The column that we habitually like and the column that we habitually dislike. So these are the likes and the dislikes. What we like, right, is praise, gain, fame, and pleasure. What we don't like is the opposite of that. Instead of pleasure, we like pleasure, we don't like pain. Right? We like fame, we don't like infamy. Loss of face, loss of good name. Right? We like praise, we don't like blame. We like gain, we don't like loss. So these are the 8 worldly concerns. Now, for the situation of Tibet, I think it's a constant refrain. The great masters always warning the disciples, don't practice Dharma for 8 worldly concerns. In their case, it became more and more of a concern because doing well in the monastery was a way in Tibetan culture to rise up in that world. You can gain a lot of wealth, you can gain a lot of power, you can gain a lot of influence, enough to bring your whole family with your uncles and nephews and grandnephews all establishing a dynasty. And in fact, that happened in Drigong with Jitten Sunggen's family. Yeah, this is not about this is not a criticism. This is just describing the social reality, the social historical reality. That Jitten Sunggen needed his blood family to hold on, to kind of keep the place together after his passing. No choice. But in that situation, it also meant that there is great potential for abuse. So many people, I mean, beyond his family, and this is not limited to his case, all the great lamas, within their lifetime, they bring their nephews, they bring their uncles, to come. Because in that social historical context, people respected family a lot. So if I listen to my lama, I will more likely listen to my lama's successor nephew than the lama's like unrelated successor. But the flip side of that is, therefore, as a society, as a culture, for Tibetans up until recently, the best way to climb up that social ladder is to enter the monastery. Kind of like in medieval Europe, You enter the church. Whether or not you have any, spiritual inclinations. If your family is ambitious, they want to grow their influence and their power. One way, if you're not born in aristocracy or if you're not born in royal, right? Go to the monastery. Make a name for yourself. And even if you're the aristocracy, then more reason to send your sons or some of your sons to kind of be the head of the local most important monastery. So particularly then, this warning against the 8 worldly concerns, there's like a very definite reason for warning. Now, having said that, our own situation, don't think, we don't have this problem. Oh yes, we do have this problem. It's just a different like version of it. So we practice Dharma. Why? Because we want relief. We want pleasure. We don't want pain. So a little bit of suffering that is involved in practice, we're like, no, I don't want that. Then fame and praise, because it's kind of, you look a little more sophisticated, if not to other people, to yourself, it's a little bit more sophisticated to be Buddhist. Baptist, oh no, that's my family. No, not me. No, I can't do that. Oh gosh. Be careful that it doesn't become that. Especially the younger ones. As a way to kind of, annoy the family. I remember this one comedian joking about how he said, it's like Buddhism is more trendy, in America for young people, because it's not that inconvenient to be Buddhist, Islam, oh wait, that's really, demanding, so it's not so many conversions, I forgot who this comedian was, but it's very insightful. He says, and if they do convert, it's usually they're in prison, and it's because you're already in prison, it's already inconvenient, so compared to that, there's nothing so inconvenient, becoming Muslim in prison. But then, if you are like outside here, you want to, like, piss off your parents, Islam is not your first choice because it's really inconvenient. You actually have to change, Buddhists, you can say whatever you want, So the eight worldly concerns, it says, like we got to be careful and make sure that, our Dharma practice is not based on these eight worldly concerns. And then in particular, right, in this first Dharma, the Dharma that turns toward the Dharma, understanding cause and effect. So now we look at the four Dharmas of Gampopa text. The first one, the precious Guru says, there is the Dharma that turns toward the Dharma, and then the Dharma that turns toward the path, and the path that dispels delusions, and delusions that appear as wisdom. So this formulation, Dharma, refers to that one that you should trust in the law of karma, that you should trust karma, trust the workings of cause and effect, cause and result. So that turns toward the Dharma refers to that all wholesome deeds one does will not be stained by concerns for this life. Concerns for this life is basically that short-term view. Everything is measured in terms of, like, right now. This is like the wrongly applied be here now, like instant gratification. So be careful, it's saying here, don't let your Dharma practice be stained by instant gratification. That's concern for this life. Not to be concerned for this life, or not to have our concerns, not let how we act be determined by just about this life, is saying, not necessarily literally, like next life, but it's saying, can we see further than, right, what is conceivable right now in terms of this life? Can we have a bigger view than that? So it's saying that if you really want to practice this as Dharma, and not just something to improve samsara, to improve confused existence, but if you really want to, like, overturn confusion, then your perspective, your view has to be beyond what we can kind of see right now, right, in this life. We have to be able to think beyond this limited framework. So that turns toward the path. The Dharma that turns towards the path refers to, since all wholesome deeds one does are caused by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, one will dedicate them to the benefit of others. So the second Dharma, according to here, because there are some variations in other commentaries, right? This is the shortest one that we have. It says here, the second Dharma is the transition from self-concern into concern for others. Here, this self-concern is not the pre-Dharma practice self-concern. The pre-Dharma practice self-concern don't even have a correct understanding of cause and effect. It's the completely upside down self-concern. We think like by harming others, we think like by taking advantage of others, we can get ahead and we can get our wishes fulfilled. We can find our happiness by bulldozing whoever is in our way. That kind of self-concern, right, is not what we're talking about here. Here, it's already a skillful kind of self-concern, meaning a self-concern based on understanding, suffering comes from unskillful actions. Happiness comes from skillful action. So if I want happiness and don't want suffering, then I shall minimize until I completely stop creating unskillful actions. I shall maximize skillful actions. Yeah. This is the skillful self-concern. And that pertains to the first of the 4 dharmas. The second of the 4 dharmas is now, even with that skillful self-concern, it's an impediment if we don't go beyond that. How do we go beyond that? Is to transfer that concern for self to concern for others. Yeah. So the skill still needs to be there. The skillful way of being concerned still need to be there. But now, not just directed, not just with the focus on ourselves, but in a way that cares for others. And this is when it becomes. This is when it becomes. This is when it becomes the second dharma. The dharma that turns towards the path. Let's pause here and see if anyone has questions or comments.
Dr. Lai.
Yes.
In point 2, and it says, the Dharma that towards the path. The path is loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. Yes? No.
Basically, the second dharma is the dharma that turns towards the path. Yeah? And what does that mean? It's when we are motivated by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta that we engage in the path.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not necessarily, although it's not wrong, but it's not necessarily saying that the path is loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. It's saying, see, loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta are basically the ingredients of what we call relative bodhicitta. Yeah, meaning by the force of loving kindness and compassion towards others, we now commit ourselves to achieving Buddha so that we can help them, so that we can be most effective in helping them. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Lai,
Mm-hmm.
can you discuss a little bit the difference between the preliminary efforts towards that. I know a lot of people whose heart goes out to people who are empathetic. I know a lot of people who don't really know what to do because they are constantly frustrated by the fact that people are suffering so much. And the frustration itself seems to create more negativity and
Oh
more
yes. Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah, I know. So that's, I think, you know, I mean, like, right, the bluntly, you don't even understand the basics of, you know, what the Buddha pointed out, you know, where suffering comes from, where happiness comes from, right? So, of course, you know, with random other people, what to say, you know, I don't know how to help them, you know, because if you tell them what the Buddha taught, they're like, well, I don't know, you know. But at the very least, you know, and I think we're more talking about people who supposedly have already started Dharma practice and doing Dharma practice and all of that, then getting all bent completely out of shape by the fact that other people insist on suffering. Really, I mean, other people insist on suffering, you know, and then we get all worked up. Then if that happens, you have to really go back and revisit this. Like, do you even understand the very basis of the Buddha's, what the Buddha taught? This is not about becoming like jaded or like insensitive. This is really about developing wisdom. Yeah, so if you think this is compassion, you know, aching over, stressing over, crying over the fact that other people are suffering, then you're not doing anything. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping other people. You're just, you know, a emotional vampire.
Yeah, these are people who are practicing Vajrayana.
Yeah, so
and to themselves, to their own, in their own
Yes.
consciousness, they are identifying with the divine, the most helpful. And then when they don't get response from
Yes.
other people, it all just sort of collapses in on
It
itself.
sort of collapses, yes, because this
Real
is
bad.
so this is, you know, like in one of Jitten Sunggen's teachings that we translated, I think Khenchen Rinpoche taught that, the play of the elephants. Yeah, that particular teaching, where Jitten Sunggen talks about the various degrees of compassion, you know, and he lays out so clearly there. He says, like, when compassion is wrapped up with self-grasping, oh, he says, you know, I mean, he doesn't say it, but you can read it and you get it, you know, and in my words, you know, I would say, then you are done, you know, you're done for. Yeah? Like compassion, when it's wrapped up together with self-grasping, then there's no end to that. Because at the end, you're not really concerned about other people. You're like, how come I cannot do something for them? How come they are not responding to my efforts, you know? Zhongsai Khyentse Rinpoche, one time I remember he said, you know, he said in one of his earlier teachings where he was teaching multi-year, this one text called Madhyamaka Avatar, Entrance into the Middle Way. A really good series, turned into a book. But I don't know, somebody gave me like the audio recording, but it also turned into a book. And so on Siddhartha's Intent in that website, you can download this book. This is when, before he was such a superstar, you know, before he decided to say random things to irk people on Facebook. He taught for like several years this Madhyamaka Avatar, And at the beginning of Madhyamaka Avatara, it talks about the 3 types of compassion. So anyway, he said, it's easy to have compassion, if you're walking down Main Street, America, and have 1 or 2 instances where you can go feel compassionate and go do something and you feel good about it, he says. He says, but that's not compassion. And he says, because if that moment you get transported to Delhi, see where your compassion goes. And he says, the minute you walk out of your bus, you're mobbed by beggars. I've seen, people who become paralyzed, when they're in India, by the sight of the poverty, the need, the suffering, completely. And again, for people who don't have Dharma, it's not their fault, that they feel this way. But as Dharma practitioners, if you think you're a Dharma practitioner and you still don't get the Buddha's main point, and you become overwhelmed, then in some ways I fault you. Or maybe I fault your teachers to not have taken the responsibility to make sure you really work on it. Now, I can say, in this group, there are still some of us, sometimes even, it's not like you pass the test, and then that's it, it will come and hit you again. You will get thrown off course. But please remember, before you talk about compassion, you have to understand Buddha's 4 Noble Truths. Suffering, origin of suffering, the end of suffering, the way to end suffering. This has to be very clear, not intellectually, but really from the heart. We have to get that. Yeah, it is. You've been around long enough in Dharma circles, and I'm sure you're seeing a lot of this, and it's like, oh my God, unfortunate, yeah.
It increases grasping instead of decreasing
Yes.
grasping.
Yeah.
So it's
and it's always it's not easy, I will give you that, and I should say that it's not easy. I don't want it to sound like it's so easy, but it is necessary to transform our understanding, to keep working on refining our understanding. That's why it goes back to what I was saying, especially from Jitten Sunggen's approach to all of this. He says the very basic stuff, foundational stuff, is basically what we're working on from beginning to the end. So even the so-called higher teachings, Vajrayana, subtle body, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, this Chen, and Chen, whatever Chen, it is all to get us to, get what he taught at the ground level. Everything is already there. So we always return to the ground level.
so that's very helpful, because maybe when I speak to these guys and their suffering is immense about Trump and these guys and those guys, maybe we can steer the conversation to the ground level again.
Yes.
So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Just to discuss it, both of us, not
Yeah.
just reminders. It's good.
The third, the path that dispels delusions, refers to the following. Due to having accustomed oneself to loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, and suchness, And they're talking about emptiness. And there, right here, it's saying not only getting accustomed, meaning like familiarize, meaning meditate, meaning training the mind on relative bodhicitta, which is loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and suchness. Now, the third Dharma is moving us to meditating on, training in absolute bodhicitta, emptiness, suchness, which is the comprehension arises that all phenomena resemble dream illusions. And so one turns away from clinging to things. And this is related, to the compassion. So sometimes you could start from the direction of compassion and loving kindness and wanting to achieve Buddhahood for the sake of others. So then there's still emotional baggage, there's still emotional drama. It's okay. Now, from here you need to work at, to see all phenomena resembling dream illusions. In the Lojong 7-point tradition, it starts first with illusion. It starts first with absolute bodhicitta, then training in relative bodhicitta. So there are, variations on how you approach it. We don't need to be fundamentalists. In fact, I would say the Kagyu tradition, for good or for bad, is a little wishy-washy. It's like you can come from it from here, you can come from it from here. Sometimes it is this, sometimes it is that. And so the more kind of like, no, 1 and 2 and 3 will say, what is it? Is it this or is it that? But here, it says you can start with compassion first, and loving kindness, and wanting all beings to be free from suffering. Yes, you can go from there, but in the third Dharma, you have to see the illusory nature of all phenomena, so that one turns away from fixating on things. Really, what things, what we're talking about by things or phenomena, you take it home and away from like big philosophical words and ideas, is experiences. Don't cling to your experiences, good or bad. Don't cling. Don't cling doesn't mean going about life in a dreamy and zombie-like. That's spiritual bypassing. Don't cling doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean like, now, I should try to not taste anything that I eat or smell or see, right? Turn everything gray. Go get new lenses. Like, those vivid colors are bad for me because I will cling to them. So I'm going to get like blurry glasses and gray tint. Turn everything dirty, right? Then food. I'm just going to take all spices out, just plain. That way, no clinging. No, it's not talking about this. I mean, neither is it talking about you should go add more spice to your food or add more color. It's not talking about either of those. It's saying not clinging means, leaving no traces behind. In the Zen tradition, they have this expression, to leave no traces behind, so that the predators cannot get you. It's like you're an animal, You have to move about in the forest in a way that your predators cannot track you down. So don't leave any tracks behind. So we have these experiences, but we should not leave tracks behind. Otherwise, the enemies that are the afflictive emotions will get you. So how to love without living, without leaving tracks behind. How to care without leaving tracks behind. Not so easy, you know, but possible. Possible. And if we can make it 1% possible, then we're 1% more free. If we can make it 2% more possible, we're 2% more free. Up to 20%, up to 27%, up to 34%. To whatever degree that we're able to do this, not leaving traces behind. To that degree, we will be more free and less likely to fall prey to these predators. The fourth Dharma, delusions that appear as wisdom, refers to the following. On the basis of meditating on that comprehension, the previous comprehension, one comprehends the reality of the natural state, the nature of the mind itself, and one understands that all phenomena of cyclic existence and nirvana are by nature unproduced and without arising. So this is the final realization that began with the third Dharma. In the fourth Dharma, directly, the way things are is what we're training in. Yeah, so this is very briefly, this one excerpt. This is from the fragmented talks of the Dharma Lord.
Dr. Lai?
Yes.
When you talk about the final realization, are you talking about the experience of emptiness, not the knowing or the experience?
That and more than that. That and more than that.
Okay.
Right now, we don't have to worry about too much about what is that. Yeah. All we just need to know it's about seeing things as they are. But seeing things as they are is not as simple as just seeing things as they are. Yeah. There are so many kind of more and more profound seeing things as they are, you know. Sometimes in an effort to encourage people, you know, especially the more popular writings about Buddhism, you know, they make it sound like, you know, enlightenment is just, you know, it's not just. It's not just, you know, it's like, whoa, you know. So like in Kyopa Jitten Sunggen's case, you know, when he was with his teacher Pamodrupa, he already had the realization of emptiness. And then he thought, you know, this is it. But then his teacher said, no, this is not it. There's more to go. He was like, what? And then, you know, he realized, oh, yes, there is more to go. Then when he was in Echong Cave, the first 3 years, again, he had this profound breakthrough. Then he thought, this must be it. Then very quickly he understood, no, this is not it. Yeah. And the point here, you know, like I know maybe some of you would say, oh, oh, you mean it's not so easy? Oh, when am I going to get there, right? Don't worry about when you're going to get there. If you can get there so easily, it's kind of pointless, you know. You have to think in terms of like, because it is not possible, that's why it's worth doing. I've said this is the essence of the Bodhisattva vow. In the Zen tradition, they are more comfortable in having the paradox be there, you know. So the way they articulate the Bodhisattva vows is in 4 parts. And in all 4 parts, it's all based on, you know, I mean, poetically, it sounds, oh, yes, yes. But logically, it's like illogical. Because the 4 vows is in the Zen tradition of, presenting the Bodhisattva vow, they say there are 4. First one is 众生无边誓愿度. Sentient beings are limitless. I vow to liberate all of them. It's like, oh, wow, right? It's like, but wait, limitless. Do you know the definition of limitless? Well, apparently as a bodhisattva, you have to say, yes, I understand limitless, and I'm going to go liberate all of them. It's like, wait, come on. Did you understand the qualifier? They are limitless. Yes. And second, it says, afflictions, afflictive emotions are inexhaustible. I vow to extinguish all of them. Wait, inexhaustible. Yes. And therefore, I vow to extinguish all of them. And then it says, the Buddha Dharma, the Dharma methods are like limitless. It says, I vow to master all of them. And Buddhahood is like unsurpassed, with the connotation of almost like unreachable. I vow to reach it. So there, they put the tension right there. And I really like those formulation like that, because it's saying, sometimes it will feel like it's impossible, but yet we vow to do it. On some days, it feels like this is all possible. This is when things are going well. Okay, fine. Oh yes, your theme song comes on, you feel a halo, you feel some warmth in your body, and it's like, oh yes, I will do the impossible, But on those other days when you're like, I feel like a complete failure and jerk, that is when you say, yes, I vow to achieve Buddhahood because I'm a complete failure and jerk. That's how it works. I feel like such a fraud. Exactly. Therefore, you should strive to become Buddha. Not, I feel like such a fraud. I'm not practicing for 2 weeks now. I'm going to run away now. No, I feel like a fraud. Oh, good. Congratulations. You realize something. I feel like such a selfish SOB. Good. Congratulations. Your good karma ripened. You realize something, This tension, Also, samsara and nirvana, Two sides of the same coin, same hand. Questions, comments? We have about 15 minutes. I won't start something new. Now, questions about other things, your Dharma practice, and not just what we've been talking about. It's fine to ask right now. By the way, there's lots of programs and teachings available online. Just even within Drukung Kagyu teachers, Gachen Rinpoche is, tirelessly doing things. Kenchen Rinpoche is tirelessly doing things. And then in between, you know, many other Khenpo's lamas are tirelessly doing things. So there are lots of things to attend, you know, if you want to attend. And various people have directly asked me, should I attend, should I not? Now I can just say to all of you, you know, like, you should attend, you know, if you feel you want to attend, you should attend. Then whatever you can digest, please digest. Whatever you cannot digest, just leave it alone. Yeah, if you do it in that spirit, you know, there is no harm. Yes.
Okay.
We cannot hear. Oh, I cannot hear at least. Can you all hear? No. Okay. Maybe turn off video and try again. Whoever it is, I don't even know who was asking a question. Still there? Gone? Hello? Cannot hear?
I disappear for a few seconds.
Oh, okay.
Not enough karma to keep the the internet.
No, not enough bandwidth.
No. That was joke. Maybe a bad joke. Okay. I've been trying to follow several teachings, but let's say keeping in mind that I don't overload myself.
Yes.
And listen without practice, as you suggest. We know, okay, but I have to practice. Okay,
Yes.
having that in mind. But I found out that it was useful for me to first keep, of course, because you know, I found this Dharmadata nuns, so it was good because I realized they were also Tibetan Buddhist nuns. So I said, well, great, because they're very didactic. I think it's for beginners. It's like A, B, C, and then very slow.
Yes.
So, yes, and then but also when you introduce us to these other teachers with the programs that we do jointly with Asia and yes, and then what I felt useful is to keep with the same lineage and try to listen to those that you were referring us to.
Right.
So I think that's that I found.
Yeah. I think, you know, yeah, exactly. You have to kind of figure out your own balance.
To avoid confusion.
Exactly. So if you prioritize that way, then you won't run into that many problems, you know?
Yeah, and but there was as much as I've been, well, my sharing my experience in this months, I realized I had that feeling of urgency. You know, I really need to connect to, you know, try to practice and all of that. So at least I thought I was having that feeling of urgency, you know, to commit to the Dharma and practice and stuff. And at the same time, the last couple of weeks, I guess, when I found, oh, this weekend there is this practice. Oh, I would like to attend. No. But I've been stealing so many weekends from my family that
yes.
and
Yes.
then I was in the other balance. I said no, because
Exactly.
I respect to your teachings. I said like, okay, I don't have to grasp, and then let's have this grasping of the Dharma teachings and stuff.
This is a marathon. This is not a sprint, you know.
Well, I just wanted to share these
good. You have to pay attention to family, you know.
Yes, that
create problems.
It's been useful to try to find a balance between the lineage, not getting confused, trying like having what Lama Tony Karam in Mexico says your Dharma practice, your menu, you know, like your
Yes.
right menu, the right
Yes.
diet for you.
Yes. Yes.
So I wanted to share that with
Yeah.
everybody. And you.
Yeah. You know, always, you know, as I said, I mentioned this before, right? Even like in one monastery, right? As an analogy, in one monastery, you know, all these monks, you know, or nuns, you know, they entered when they were about this tall, you know. So they basically grew up together there and all of that. So they all have like a set of texts, yeah, that are all similar. But then each one's bundle of texts, one part, it is all similar. Everyone from the same nunnery has the same thing. But every nun probably has other things that makes it completely different from the other nuns, even her roommate. This is just the way it is, you know, in Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah. So the core things, it's all the same. So this analogy carries over even to the question of like lineage, the question of like within lineage, teacher. Yeah. So there is again a common thread, right? So among a group of people, yeah, you all might have this person as a common teacher, but at the same time, you know, you also have connections with like other teachers. Now, having said that, I think this is a point of confusion too. Having said that, right? You yourself at some point want to be clear about who is your main reference point. Because otherwise, it's like you have a lot of icing and no cake. And lots of icing and no cake, you're going to get sick. Yeah, so you need to have or the Tibetans will say, a lot of ornaments, no body. Then how are you going to hang all these ornaments, you know? So once you have a body, then, I mean, this is also the Tibetan aesthetic, you know, then they say, the more ornaments, the better, you know. Of course, the Japanese will say, no, don't do that. But the Tibetan aesthetic, you know, they say, once you have a healthy body, yeah, then you ornament it with as many ornaments as you can find. So they say, once you have your main Dharma clear, yeah, then the more you learn, the more you take from everything, yeah, becomes something that enhances the main body. So you have to be the one that kind of keep developing, keeping aware, you know, like, is this body building or not building? Or am I, yeah? And really, no one really knows except for yourself. And sometimes you yourself don't even know. That's just part of the process. Yeah? That's just part of the process. So all we can do is to remember this. Then knowing how to balance, you know, we are at different points in our lives, you know. Some of us need to learn more, and some of us are like, no, I'm done learning more, as in more variety. Yeah, I am now settled, and I will just keep doing the practice, keep doing the practice, keep doing the practice. Then realization comes. Yeah, for sure.
Dr. Lai, one of the challenges that comes along with learning from you and from Drikung Kagyu in general, as you said, is, you know, getting more and more ornaments. And now what I've found in my own practice, that taking, for instance, this 4 points and seeing how they balance each other out, not just, you know, I'll remember point 1 from the 7-point training, point 3 from the 4 Dharmas of Gampopa, you know, and that leads to some kind of jerking around of the mind, you know?
Yes.
But when I can take, I think the next step in my process, and I probably think other people too, is to take this and see how each point adds and balances. It's almost like tiddlywinks, you know?
Yes.
1, 2, and then these 2 balance and those 2 balance.
Yes.
Actually form a whole
Right.
teaching.
And that changes over time. And that's because it's an organic process, because it's alive, right? So until we get to the state of Buddha, it will continue to change, continue to evolve, continue. And so our practice is alive in that way. Yeah, and not stagnant. But importantly, then of course each lineage has general characteristics and general kind of style. And then of course each teacher has a general style, general characteristics, you know. That's just the way it is, you know. Yeah, Kagyu, you know, and early Kagyupa, in some ways I'm pretending or advocating going back to early Kagyupas. By that I mean Gampopa, and within 1 or 2 generations of Gampopa. Milarepa and Marpa, we don't have, I feel, enough evidence of what sorts of communities were actually around these 2 figures. I mean, as a historian, and I've looked into this a lot, it's not a very clear sense, because a lot of the Milarepa stories and material came like a few hundred years later. And so there's already a kind of thinking about, you know, what happened 400 years before. Anyway, you know, that's my historian geek hat. Anyway, but from Gampopa's time, we have enough evidence, I think, and more is being translated, is being studied, that showed us that in this early Dakpo Kagyu community, you know, Gampopa's disciples, grand disciples, which takes us to Jitten Sunggen's time, this was a community that, for the most part, privileges and emphasizes a less scholastic approach, a more experiential approach, an approach that is not so wedded to categories and names and definitions. Although it exists, for example, the jewel ornament is definitely, but the jewel ornament is really, in a way, an anomaly in terms of Gampopa's collected works. Nothing else in Gampopa's writing quite resembles the jewel ornament, to the point that there's one modern scholar who says, I'm not convinced he wrote it. Yeah. No, I think there's enough, to me, evidence that, no, he wrote it, you know. But I think he wrote it that way because the other 98% of what he wrote or he taught is much more fluid, right? So he needed the jewel ornament to be an anchor, because it can be so fluid until, you know, you're lost, right? So loosey-goosey until there's nothing there. Yeah. So therefore, jewel ornament became important. as a reference point, you know, before you go so far until it's not recognizable, like what the heck are you practicing? Yeah. Some have characterized the early Kagyu as anti-intellectual, but it's not anti-intellectual. Yeah, it's anti is too strong, you know, as if, you know, they were like campaigning against, you know, intellectual understanding. But no, it's just saying it can't take you that far. Don't spend too much time building systems. If you build and you build and you build and then you die, then what? You know? So try to, of course, at the beginning, you are building your body of knowledge. But I think what the early Kagyupa masters are saying is, yes, to some degree, you need to build a body of knowledge. But if you spend too much time just building a body of knowledge and not tasting, then you'll be in trouble. So it's not against learning, but it's saying, you know, let's be realistic, you know. You don't know when you're going to die. And so when you are actively dying, that knowledge is not going to do you much good. So even as you're building this knowledge, which is necessary, especially at the beginning, but try to experience. That's why I always try to say, to invite you to ask, okay, what is the take-home lesson? That's my way of talking about how do I experience this, you know? What does it mean to me? Yeah, what does it mean to me? You know, how does this apply? I think that's an important thing to, you know, have in the back of your mind as we're learning. Yeah, so anyway, people and pets are waiting for you, so we'll do dedication. Let's do this one on page 32. This is a special dedication prayer that Jitten Sunggen gave to his disciples. So again, let body, mind, all the excitement of the teachings, the thinking, the considering, let that all kind of quiet down and settle. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Viras, Viranis, Yoginis, and Tarkinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara, and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers. And may all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstructors who harm, those who create obstacles, maras who mislead, and their mara retinues, have happiness, be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, and precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind.
May the afflicted thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment. With my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta, may I come under the care of virtuous spiritual friends, and having become as limitless as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. Notice that in this dedication prayer, there are parts that is exactly the same as the aspiration bodhicitta. And so the beginning and at the end, one full circle. Yeah. In a way, the motivation at the beginning and the dedication at the end, they are the same thing. And so in another of the teachings of Jitten Sunggen that we translated, he gave the example of, like he says, in Manjushri's life story, Manjushri the Bodhisattva, the first time he generated bodhicitta was actually in the context of him dedicating merit. Yeah, he did something that created a lot of merit, and it was all praised by everyone. And then he asked kind of a question, like, so what should I do with this merit? And then he heard sounds resounding in the space coming from the sky, which is said that all the gods told him, you should dedicate this to the enlightenment of all beings. And he said, okay, I will do that. Then when he did that, that, it said, became his first instance of generating bodhicitta. That is how Manjushri generated bodhicitta. So, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Bai.
Good morning, good night, tata, bye-bye.
Good night, Tata.
Good night.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Good night.
Thank you.
Gracias.